Today we need to discuss revision. There's usually a lot of student confusion about the difference between proofreading, editing, and revision. Each one of these things is actually separate, although in the English language they're sometimes turned into synonyms in a way that's not particularly useful when you're trying to learn how to write. Okay, so let's take them on one by one. Proofreading. Well, quite frankly, this is the thing you're actually doing last. At this point, all you're doing is looking for typos. This is just the final read-through before you turn something in either to your professor or, if it's on the job, to the editor of the newspaper to be reviewed, or turning it into the journal if you're trying to get published, that kind of thing. It's actually a last stage thing. Editing. This is the word that is often, most often I would say, confused with the word revision. People are like, I need to go edit my article. Well, it works, and language grows, it changes, it shifts. But again, in order for these concepts to really be useful to you as a student learning to write, you need to pull them apart. Editing is actually doing things like fixing your grammar. This is where you're going through and you're like, okay, do I need this comma here? Do I not? If you are struggling a lot with grammar, then you're like, okay, is this a sentence fragment? Is this a run-on sentence? Do I really need a semicolon here instead of a comma? This is more or less the editing style of work, okay? It's not anything big. It's just making sure that when you turn in your paper, your lab report, or later on in life, your article, or if you are a writer of fiction and poetry, your poem or your novel, that you haven't made any really embarrassing grammar mistakes. Okay, fine. So what is revision? Revision is global. You're looking at the entire paper in a global way and going, do I need this paragraph? Do I need a new introduction? Does my introduction no longer fit my paper? Is my conclusion really a solid conclusion for what I've had to say? Should I pick up this point and move it up further in the paper? Should I grab this and move it further down? Do I have enough evidence for this part of my argument? Do I need to add some more ethos here? Or do maybe I need some more logos or logic here? These are actually really big questions. This is a moment where you might read over your paper and go, I'm not really sure this thesis works anymore. What I actually wrote doesn't match the thesis sentence that I made, so I need to cut this thesis and write a whole new one to match the paper that I actually produced. In other words, these are the kinds of thoughts that you quite frankly don't want to be having. And I know that because even though I was an English and psychology double major, I in absolutely no way whatsoever want to take a composition course. I hated writing research papers, I hated writing nonfiction, I really just wanted to be writing poetry and short stories and novels, and somebody going, hey, I really need you to think about how you want to revise that 10-page research paper for your Comp 2 class was the last thing I wanted to hear. I'm like, no, I am taking a 5-class load. I really just need to be done. Done, okay, done. I'll give it a quick read-through. I'll make sure I don't have any stupid typos. I'll try to remember what my grandma was a high school English teacher, when my grandma taught me about commas, so I don't have any stupid comma mistakes. And then I just want to turn it in. And I hope it gets an A, but I just need this to be over. I need it to be over, okay? I've got a life that I need to live here. As in, I have algebra homework, and I have biology homework, and. I get it, okay? And some of you are also working jobs, either part-time jobs or full-time jobs, or you have children, or whatever. I get it. You don't actually want to ask these questions. However, unfortunately for all of us, sometimes this is necessary. Sometimes you really need to stop and go, this paper's not working. I really don't want to admit that, but I need to cut half the paper because I started wandering off topic as the paper went on, and I got distracted and I ended up talking about something that didn't even have anything to do with the assignment because I'll be really honest, I thought it was more interesting than the assignment, but now the paper doesn't match what I was asked to do, and I don't want to fail this paper. And then you have to cut like half the paper and rewrite it. Those are revision style changes, big global changes. This is also a place where you might ask yourself, the evidence that I have, okay, so I made good points, did I support them with enough secondary or even primary research? Do I have the right sources for this paper? Do these people have enough credentials, these people I'm citing or summarizing from, for me to be building good ethos in my paper so I sound credible and people want to believe me and they want to take my side in this argument? These are the kinds of questions that revision is asking of you. And again, you don't want to hear this, and I know it. This means you need to let your paper rest. People have the hardest time doing this. Me included. Again, I'm admitting up front, I wasn't feeling any differently about it when I was in Comp 2. I needed to leave the paper alone. Writers need to leave the paper alone. For days, preferably. You need to forget what you meant to say, what you think that you said. You need to forget, you need to leave it alone, and you need to come back and read the paper and find out what you actually said. You've got to get some distance. Because, right in the middle of it, when you're typing as fast as you can, you're like, oh yeah, I totally need this, and I totally need that, and oh, this would be a good point here, and am I done yet? Let's check the word count. Okay, nope, I've got like 300 more words. Okay, let me think of something, okay, because I'm going to probably only spend 100 words on the conclusion, so, oh wait, I know what I'll say this. You're like right in the middle of it, and you need to get distance from that. You need to let it rest. Like, go work on homework from another class. Preferably, leave it alone, like I said, for a couple of days, come back and then go, do I need to make any really big changes here in order for this paper to make sense and to have the strongest points that it can have? Then, preferably, again, let it rest for at least a day and then come back and edit it. Check it for grammar. Then, let it rest one more time, and then right before you submit it, proofread it. Make sure there are no typos. Again, these are things that not just professors are looking at. Like, did you care enough about your paper to proofread it before you turned it in? Did you run the spell checker? Or did you just snap it off so fast that you'd even bother to run the spell checker? In the future, your bosses will care about this too, because they'll see these kinds of mistakes that you would make up here as shoddy work. They're like, oh, so you don't actually care about this job. Well, I'm not sure I like your attitude, and if you don't, if you're not really into this job, maybe we need someone else. That's really brutal, but, it's also my job to warn you about these kinds of things. Like, a really bad, glaring set of typos in a resume could cause a potential employer to toss your resume. So, all three of these steps matter, but you're going from the ground up here as far as, what I wrote on the board. The revision comes first. Make sure the paper's solid. Then you can edit it for grammar and syntax. And then finally you can proofread it for typos. So, I sometimes cringe when I have to break these things down because of the way English is always shifting, in which sometimes people say editing when they mean revision. But it is really important, and it's important that you give yourself space to think about big global changes and space to make those changes so that you can actually write the best paper possible and then hopefully make the best grade possible. Alright, so give it some thought and maybe look at your schedule and see how far in advance to start working on a paper so you can build in enough time to even do this stuff.